Hi, I'm Lucy Chen, and I guess I should start by saying that 3 months ago I was nobody. Well, not exactly nobody. I was a 22-year-old graduate student at Columbia University, spending my days buried in sheet music and my nights playing piano in dimly lit coffee shops around Manhattan for tips that barely covered my subway fare home. The October air was crisp that evening as I walked through Washington Square Park, my worn leather messenger bag heavy with compositions I'd been working on for months. The leaves were turning that perfect shade of amber that only happens in New York City autumns, and the street performers were still out, their music mixing with the distant hum of traffic. I loved this time of year. It felt like the city was holding its breath, waiting for something magical to happen. My parents had called earlier that day, their voices crackling through the phone from their small apartment in Chinatown. "Lucy, when are you going to stop this music nonsense and focus on something practical?" my mother had asked in Mandarin, her tone carrying that familiar mix of concern and disapproval. Mrs. Wang's daughter just got promoted to senior analyst at Goldman Sachs. She's buying a house in New Jersey. I'd given them the same answer I always did. "Soon, Mom. I'm working on something important." But the truth was, I wasn't sure if I believed it myself anymore. The coffee shop where I played 3 nights a week was called The Grind, a cramped space squeezed between a bodega and a dry cleaner on Bleecker Street. The owner, Marcus, was a middle-aged black man from Brooklyn who'd given me the gig 6 months earlier after hearing me play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. "You've got something special, kid," he'd said, wiping down the espresso machine. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That night, as I set up my keyboard in the corner near the window, I noticed someone new in the audience. She was an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, wearing an expensive-looking coat that seemed out of place among the usual crowd of college students and young professionals. She ordered a simple black coffee and sat alone at a table near the piano, watching me intently. I played my usual repertoire. Some jazz standards, a few classical pieces, and then, almost without thinking, I began to play something I'd been composing. It was a piece about longing, about the feeling of being caught between two worlds. The one your parents want for you and the one you're trying to create for yourself. The melody started soft and uncertain, like a question being asked in the dark, then built into something more complex, more demanding. As I played, I lost track of time. The coffee shop faded away and there was only the music and the story it was telling. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment before the scattered applause began. But it was the woman with the silver hair who caught my attention. She was writing something in a small notebook, her pen moving quickly across the page. After my set, she approached me. "That last piece," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. "It's unpublished, isn't it? Original composition." I nodded, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "Yes, it's something I've been working on." She handed me a business card. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm a talent scout for the American Music Awards. We're always looking for fresh compositions for our emerging artist categories." She paused, studying my face. "That piece you played, it has something. A vulnerability that's rare in young composers today." I stared at the card, my hands trembling slightly. The American Music Awards. I'd watched them on television every year, dreaming of what it would be like to be on that stage, to have my music heard by millions of people. "I'd like you to submit a full composition," Elena continued. "We have a category for Best Original Composition by an Emerging Artist. The deadline is in 2 weeks. Think you can put together something complete by then?" I managed to nod, though my throat felt dry. After she left, I sat alone at the piano for another hour, my fingers moving over the keys as my mind raced. This was it. The break I'd been waiting for, the chance to prove that all those late nights and financial struggles hadn't been for nothing. When I finally made it back to my tiny studio apartment in the East Village, I called my parents. It was past midnight, but I was too excited to wait until morning. "Lucy? What's wrong?" My father's voice was groggy but concerned. "Nothing's wrong, Dad. Something amazing happened tonight. I met someone from the American Music Awards and they want me to submit a composition for." "Lucy," my mother's voice cut through the line. She must have picked up the extension. "It's very late. Can't this wait until tomorrow?" I took a deep breath. "Mom, this could change everything. This could be my chance to make it as a composer." There was a long pause. "Lucy, you know we love you," my father said finally. "But you're 22 years old. You can't keep chasing these dreams forever. What if this doesn't work out? What if you're just disappointed again?" Just another one of your projects that goes nowhere, my mother added, though her voice was softer now. We just want you to be secure, to have a real future. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow I would start working on the composition that could change my life. But tonight I let myself feel the weight of my parents' words, the fear that maybe they were right, that maybe I was just fooling myself. I picked up my guitar and began to play softly, letting the melody flow through the uncertainty and the hope, weaving them together into something that felt true. Outside, New York City hummed its endless song, and I played along, adding my voice to the millions of dreams that pulsed through the darkness. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of music, coffee, and sleepless nights. I called in sick to my part-time job at the university library and lived off ramen noodles and the occasional sandwich from the deli downstairs. My studio apartment, already cramped, became a maze of sheet music, coffee cups, and the persistent hum of my ancient space heater fighting against the November chill. The composition I was working on had evolved from that night at the grind. I called it Between Worlds, and it was unlike anything I'd ever written before. It started with a simple piano melody, the sound of a child practicing scales in an empty room, then layered in strings that represented the weight of expectations, the voices of family and tradition. But as the piece progressed, other instruments joined in. A saxophone that spoke of late nights and jazz clubs, guitars that hummed with possibility, percussion that beat with the rhythm of city life. My neighbor Jake was a music production major at NYU, and I'd convinced him to help me with the recording. He lived in the apartment next door, and I'd often hear him working on beats and mixes late into the night. When I knocked on his door with my laptop and a desperate expression, he took one look at me and said, "You look like you haven't slept in days. This better be good." It was good. Even Jake, who usually kept his emotions locked behind a wall of dry humor and professional detachment, was quiet after I played him the rough demo. "Lucy," he said finally, this is really something. When did you write this?" "I've been working on it for 2 weeks straight," I admitted, rubbing my eyes. "I think I've had maybe 10 hours of sleep total." He shook his head. "No, I mean, when did you become this composer? This isn't coffee shop music anymore. This is real." We spent the next 3 days recording. Jake had access to a small studio in the basement of his building, and he called in favors from classmates to get the instruments we needed. There was Maria, a violinist from El Salvador who played with a precision that made my chest ache. David, a jazz saxophonist from New Orleans whose improvisations transformed my written notes into something alive and breathing. And Sarah, a cellist who'd grown up in foster care and played like she was trying to heal the world one note at a time. Each of them brought something to Between Worlds that I hadn't known was missing. Maria's violin soared above the melody like hope itself. David's saxophone added layers of complexity that spoke to the struggle of finding your voice in a world that wanted to keep you quiet. Sarah's cello provided the foundation, the deep, resonant reminder that no matter how far you traveled, your roots followed you. On the night before the deadline, I sat in the studio listening to the final mix. The 5-minute composition told the story of every immigrant child, every dreamer who'd ever felt caught between the life their parents wanted and the life they were trying to create. It was my story, but it was also universal. The sound of America itself, messy and beautiful and full of possibility. "You need to submit this," Jake said, handing me a flash drive. "Like now. The deadline is in 6 hours." I took the drive, my hands shaking slightly. What if it's not good enough? What if they listen to it and realize I'm just some kid playing coffee shops? "Then they're idiots," Sarah said firmly. She'd stayed late to help with the final mix, and her eyes were bright with exhaustion and something else, belief. "Lucy, I've been playing music my whole life and I've never heard anything like this. You're not just some kid. You're a composer." I submitted the composition at 3 a.m., sitting in an all-night diner on Avenue A with my laptop balanced on the sticky table. The upload took forever on the restaurant's spotty Wi-Fi, and I sat there drinking terrible coffee and watching the progress bar inch forward. When it finally finished, I felt empty and full at the same time, like I'd just sent a piece of my soul into the world. The confirmation email arrived immediately. "Thank you for your submission to the American Music Awards. Judging will take place over the next 6 weeks. Winners will be announced at the ceremony on December 15th. 6 weeks. I had 6 weeks to wait, to wonder, to try to keep living my life while this enormous possibility hung over everything. I didn't tell my parents. I couldn't bear the thought of their polite skepticism, their gentle suggestions that I shouldn't get my hopes up. Instead, I threw myself back into my normal routine. Classes at Columbia, shifts at the library, gigs at the grind. But everything felt different now. The music I played in the coffee shop felt smaller, more contained. I'd tasted something bigger and I couldn't pretend I hadn't. 3 weeks after I submitted Between Worlds, Elena Vasquez called me. I was in the middle of cataloging new acquisitions at the library when my phone rang, and I nearly dropped a stack of books when I saw her name on the screen. Lucy? I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. No, this is fine, I said, stepping into an empty study room. Is everything okay? More than okay, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I wanted to give you a heads up. The judging committee has been reviewing submissions, and your piece has made it to the final round. There are only 5 compositions left in your category. My legs felt weak and I had to sit down. 5? Out of how many? Over 300 submissions, Elena said. Lucy, I've been doing this for 15 years and I've never heard anything quite like what you created. The way you wove together classical training with contemporary influences, the emotional depth. It's extraordinary. After she hung up, I sat in the study room for a long time, watching students pass by through the glass walls. They were all so focused on their books, their exams, their practical futures. A few months ago, I'd been one of them, convinced that success meant following a predictable path. Now I had 3 weeks to wait until the ceremony, 3 weeks to find out if I was about to become someone completely different, or if I was going back to being just another struggling musician in a city full of dreamers. That night, I played at the grind with a different energy. The same crowd was there. The regulars who knew my usual songs, the college students studying for finals, the couples on awkward first dates. But when I played Between Worlds, something shifted in the room. Conversations stopped. People looked up from their laptops and phones. For 5 minutes, we were all connected by the same melody, the same story of longing and possibility. Marcus caught my eye from behind the counter and nodded approvingly. Later, as I packed up my equipment, he pulled me aside. Whatever you're working on, kid, keep working on it. That song tonight, that's the sound of someone who's found their voice. I smiled, thinking of the ceremony 3 weeks away, of the phone call I'd eventually have to make to my parents, of the future that was rushing toward me like a river in spring. Thanks, Marcus. I think I finally have. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in early December. I was in my American literature seminar, half listening to a discussion about the symbolism in The Great Gatsby, when my phone vibrated against my leg. I glanced at the screen and saw Elena's name. My heart stopped. I raised my hand and mumbled something about feeling sick, then practically ran from the classroom. In the hallway, I answered the call with shaking hands. Lucy, Elena's voice was warm and professional. I have some news for you. I leaned against the wall, my knees suddenly weak. Okay. Congratulations. You've won the American Music Award for Best Original Composition by an Emerging Artist. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Students walked past me in the hallway, chatting about their classes and weekend plans, completely unaware that my entire life had just changed with a single sentence. What? I managed to say. Elena laughed, a sound filled with genuine joy. You won, Lucy. Your composition, Between Worlds, has been selected by our judging panel as this year's winner. The ceremony is this Saturday at the Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles. We'll need you there for rehearsals on Friday. Los Angeles? I repeated stupidly. This Saturday? I know it's short notice, but that's how these things work. We'll cover all your expenses, of course. Hotel, flights, meals. And Lucy? This is just the beginning. Winning this award opens doors. Record labels will be watching. Publishing companies. This could be your breakthrough. After she hung up, I stood in the hallway for what felt like hours, watching the normal world continue around me. A couple of classmates from my seminar walked by, and one of them asked if I was okay. I nodded and smiled, but inside I was spinning. I had won. I had actually won. The first person I called was Jake. He screamed so loud through the phone that I had to hold it away from my ear. Lucy. Oh my God. We won. We actually won. We. Don't even try to take all the credit, he said, and I could hear him pacing in his apartment. I was your sound engineer. I'm putting this on my resume forever. This is incredible. Next, I called Maria, David, and Sarah. Each of them reacted with the same mixture of excitement and disbelief. Sarah actually started crying, which made me start crying, which made us both laugh through our tears. "We need to celebrate," Maria said. "All of us. Tonight." But first I had to call my parents. I walked to Central Park, needing the open space and the relative quiet. I found a bench near the reservoir and dialed their number, my hands still shaking. "Lucy." My mother's voice was concerned. "You're calling in the middle of the day. Is everything all right?" "Everything's perfect, Mom. I have some news." I told them about the award, about the ceremony, about the trip to Los Angeles. I spoke quickly, the words tumbling over each other in my excitement. When I finished, there was a long silence. "The American Music Awards?" my father said finally. That's a real thing?" "Very real, Dad. It's going to be on television. Millions of people will see it." Another silence. Then my mother's voice, carefully neutral. "That's wonderful, Lucy. We're very proud of you." But I could hear it in her tone. The same polite skepticism, the same careful distance they'd always maintained from my music. They were proud, but they were also waiting for the other shoe to drop, for this to turn out to be just another disappointment. "I was hoping you could come," I said. "To the ceremony. I can get you tickets." "Oh, honey," my mother said quickly. "It's such short notice. Your father has work and I have that volunteer thing at the community center." "It's the American Music Awards, Mom. It's this Saturday." "We know, sweetie," my father said gently. "And we're so proud of you. But these things, they're not really for people like us. We wouldn't know anyone there. We'd probably just be in the way." After I hung up, I sat on the bench watching joggers circle the reservoir. The December air was sharp and clean, and the bare trees looked like pencil sketches against the gray sky. I should have been ecstatic. I had won a major award. I was going to Los Angeles. My composition would be heard by millions of people. But all I could think about was the careful distance in my parents' voices, the way they'd said, "We're proud of you," like they were talking about a stranger. That night, Jake, Maria, David, Sarah, and I went to a rooftop bar in Soho. The city spread out below us, a carpet of lights and possibilities. We toasted with champagne that Jake had somehow managed to afford, and everyone kept saying how surreal it all was. 6 months ago, I was playing jazz clubs in the French Quarter for drunk tourists, David said, shaking his head. Now I'm going to be on television at the American Music Awards. This is insane. Good insane or bad insane? Sarah asked. The best kind of insane, he replied. As the night wore on, the others shared stories about their families' reactions. Maria's parents had screamed with joy and were already planning to throw a party for the whole neighborhood. David's grandmother had started crying and called everyone she knew. Sarah's foster mother had promised to record the ceremony on 3 different devices, just in case. I listened to their stories and felt a familiar ache in my chest. When they asked about my parents, I just said they were excited but couldn't make it to the ceremony. That's too bad, Maria said. My parents are driving up from D.C. They've never been to Los Angeles. Mine are flying in from New Orleans, David added. First time on an airplane for both of them. I smiled and nodded, but inside I was wondering what it would feel like to have parents who dropped everything to celebrate your success, who saw your dreams as their dreams too. 2 days later, I was on a plane to Los Angeles, watching the country unfold below me through the airplane window. The flight attendant brought me a complimentary drink when she heard I was going to the AMAs, and the businessman sitting next to me asked for my autograph for his daughter. I thought about my parents back in New York, probably having dinner and watching the news, going about their normal Thursday routine. I thought about the ceremony on Saturday, about walking onto that stage in front of thousands of people and millions of television viewers. For the first time in my life, I was going to be recognized for who I really was, for the music that came from the deepest part of me. But the people who had raised me, who had loved me and worried about me and wanted the best for me, wouldn't be there to see it. The plane banked toward LAX, and the city of Los Angeles spread out below me like a circuit board made of light. Somewhere down there was a theater where my name would be called, where my music would be played, where I would step into a future I'd barely dared to imagine. I closed my eyes and listened to the hum of the engines, already composing the next piece in my mind. The Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Walking through the stage door for the first time, I felt like I was entering a cathedral of American entertainment. The rehearsal space buzzed with activity. Sound technicians adjusting microphones, lighting designers programming elaborate sequences, and musicians warming up their instruments. Lucy Chin. A young woman with a clipboard and a headset approached me. I'm Jessica, one of the show coordinators. We're so excited to have you here. She led me through a maze of corridors to a small rehearsal room where a full orchestra was waiting. We've been working on your piece all week, the conductor, a dignified man named Robert Martinez, told me. Your composition is extraordinary. The musicians have been talking about it non-stop. Hearing Between Worlds played by a full orchestra was overwhelming. The piece I'd written in my tiny apartment, recorded in Jake's basement studio, had been transformed into something larger and more powerful than I'd ever imagined. When they finished the run-through, the room was silent for a moment before the musicians began to applaud. That's a standing ovation from the LA Philharmonic, Jessica whispered to me. That doesn't happen often. That evening, I called my parents from my hotel room overlooking downtown LA. The city lights stretched out below me like a river of stars, and I could hear the distant hum of traffic and life. How are the rehearsals going? My mother asked. Amazing, I said. Mom, you should hear how it sounds with a full orchestra. It's like the song I always heard in my head but could never quite capture. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Her voice was warm but distant. Your father and I will be watching tomorrow night. We've told everyone in the building to watch too. I wish you were here, I said quietly. There was a pause. We're here, Lucy. We're always here for you, even when we're not there. The day of the ceremony arrived with typical Los Angeles sunshine and a flurry of activity. Hair and makeup started at noon, and I found myself in a chair next to Grammy-winning artists and Billboard chart toppers, all of us being transformed by teams of professionals who treated this like just another day at the office. The dress Elena had helped me choose was midnight blue, simple but elegant, and when I looked in the mirror I saw someone I barely recognized. Gone was the coffee shop musician in thrift store clothes. In her place was someone who belonged on this stage in this world. You look beautiful, said the makeup artist, a woman named Carmen whose own parents had emigrated from Mexico. My daughter is studying music at UCLA. She's going to be watching tonight, hoping to be you someday. 2 hours before the show, I stood in the wings watching the final technical rehearsal. The theater was empty except for crew members, but I could feel the weight of anticipation, the knowledge that in a few hours, millions of people would be watching. Elena found me there, standing in the shadows. How are you feeling? Terrified, I admitted. What if I trip walking up to the stage? What if I can't find words when they hand me the award? She smiled. Lucy, you wrote a piece of music that made a room full of cynical industry professionals cry. Trust me, you'll find the words. The ceremony began at 8 o'clock. I sat in the third row between a pop star whose songs I'd been listening to since high school and a legendary producer who'd worked with everyone from Stevie Wonder to Beyoncé. The scale of it all was overwhelming. The lights, the cameras, the energy of the live audience. My category was about halfway through the show. As the presenter approached the podium, I felt my heart beating so hard I was sure the cameras would pick it up. The other nominees were all older, more established. I was the youngest by at least 5 years. The American Music Award for Best Original Composition by an Emerging Artist goes to. The pause felt like it lasted forever. Lucy Chin for Between Worlds. The theater erupted in applause. I sat there for a moment, stunned, before the pop star next to me gently pushed me toward the aisle. Go, she whispered. You won. Walking to the stage felt like floating. The lights were blinding, but I could see faces in the audience. Some I recognized from television and magazines, others I didn't know but who were all standing and clapping for me. For my music. For the story I'd told about finding yourself between worlds. At the podium, I looked out at the crowd and saw Jake in the audience, tears streaming down his face. Maria, David, and Sarah were there too, beaming with pride. Elena was standing near the back, her hands pressed to her heart. I started, then stopped. The words I'd rehearsed disappeared. Instead, I spoke from the heart. A year ago, I was playing piano in a coffee shop in New York City for tips. I was trying to figure out how to balance the dreams I had with the practical life everyone expected me to live. This song, Between Worlds, is about that struggle. It's about being caught between who you are and who you're supposed to be. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. I want to thank my collaborators, Jake, Maria, David, and Sarah. who helped me turn this composition into something real. I want to thank Elena Vasquez for believing in me. And I want to thank everyone who's ever felt like they didn't quite fit in one world or another. This award is for all of us. As I walked off the stage, award in hand, I felt my phone buzzing with messages. But I didn't check it until I was back in my seat. The first text was from my mother. "We're watching. You look beautiful." The second was from my father. "Your speech made us cry. We're so proud of you." And then, as the show continued around me, a longer message from both of them together. "Lucy, we owe you an apology. We've been so worried about you being hurt or disappointed that we forgot to celebrate your courage. Watching you tonight, we finally understand. You're not just our daughter anymore. You're an artist. And we couldn't be more proud." After the ceremony, there was a reception in the hotel ballroom. Record executives and music publishers approached me with business cards and promises of meetings. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests and collaboration opportunities. But the moment that mattered most came when I found a quiet corner and called my parents. It was past midnight in New York, but they were waiting by the phone. "Lucy," my mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "We should have been there." "You were there," I said. "You've always been there, even when I couldn't see it." "We want to understand," my father said. "Your music, your world. We want to be part of it." I looked around the ballroom at the industry professionals, at the Golden Award sitting on my table, at the future that was opening up before me like a door I'd been waiting my whole life to walk through. "There's room for everyone in this world," I said. "That's what the song is about. Finding a place where all the different parts of yourself can exist together." 3 months later, I was back in New York, but everything had changed. I had a recording contract, a manager, and a studio album in the works. I still played at the Grind sometimes, but now the coffee shop was packed with people who'd heard about the girl who'd won the American Music Award. My parents came to one of these shows, sitting in the front row and applauding louder than anyone else. After I finished playing, my mother approached the stage. "Lucy," she said, her voice carrying across the quiet room. "We want you to know something. You were never just another one. You were always extraordinary. We just didn't know how to see it." I looked out at the audience, at Jake and Maria and David and Sarah, at Marcus behind the counter beaming with pride, at my parents in the front row, at all the faces of people who had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "for seeing me, for helping me see myself." Later that night, I sat at my keyboard in my apartment, working on a new composition. This one was about coming home, about finding your place in the world and discovering that sometimes the people who love you most are the ones who need the most time to understand your dreams. Outside my window, New York City hummed its endless song, and I played along, adding my voice to the symphony of millions of stories, millions of dreams, millions of people finding their way between worlds. I was no longer just another one. I was Lucy Chin, composer, dreamer, bridge builder between worlds. And I was exactly where I belonged.